after having been instructed by his brother Moses, his brother Moshe, about the sacrifices that need to be brought to dedicate the new tabernacle in the desert, Moses' brother Aaron, draws near to the Mizbeach, to the altar, and brings the sacrifices exactly as prescribed by Moshe, as Hashem had commanded him, with one exception. Afterwards, immediately, if you read through the verses, you see, spontaneously, Aaron turns around, Vayisa Haroin es Yadav, Aaron raised his hands, El Ha'am, to the people, Vayavorachem, and he blessed them. He wasn't asked to do so. Moshe didn't instruct him at any point that he needs to bless the people. But Aaron recognized at that moment that he, as the high priest, as the Kohen Gadol, had a power to bless the people. And our rabbis tell us in the Medrash that as a result of this, in the merit of this, Aaron merited to two things. At that moment, say the rabbis, but Odze Shah, at that moment in time, Zacha, he merited to Matnas Kahuna, the gifts of a Kohen, and also he merited to Nesias Kapayim Duchening. The Duchening is the ability to bless, to bench, to bless the people, which the Kohenim have, which of course they perform today on Yom Tov, to bless the people. Not only Aaron, but also his children, for all generations, Kohenim have that reward. The gifts that the Kohen had was that they were given, whilst they were working in the temple, they were given, everybody had to give a certain percentage of their earnings to enable the Kohenim to live, because they didn't live by their own means. They, after all, were servants of Hashem. They performed the service in the tabernacle originally and in the temple afterwards. And so the reason he merited both of these at the same time was because it would have been inappropriate for him originally to be able to bless the people, because if all he was getting and his family were getting were from the people, then it would be contradictory in a way. He's blessing the people, and we could say that the reason he's blessing the people is because he wants to have more. The more the people have, the more he will have. If we give a percentage of our earnings and a percentage of our produce to the Kohen, Maisa, we give a tithe to the Kohen, then Aaron had a certain self-interest in blessing the people. But here he demonstrated through his own initiative that he didn't do it for his own interest. He did it because instinctively Aaron was the type of person, and he imbued and educated his family and generations afterwards with this. Instinctively, he was the type of person who wanted to, because of his position, bless the Jewish people of his own accord. And that is why he merited to it, because he arrived at this moment in time. He demonstrated that he wasn't doing it for his own benefit, but because he genuinely wanted to bless the people at that time. Therefore, as a reward for his spontaneous blessing of the people, he merited to the ability, to the gifts, but also to duchening, to the blessing of the Jewish people for all generations. We have, of course, in this week's portion, the laws of kosher, the laws of what we can eat, what we can't eat, the animals, the birds, the fish, and purity as well, that we can't come into contact with a dead animal, a dead person, the laws of purity and impurity. One of the animals, in fact, the epitome of non-kosher, even though there are many non-kosher animals, but the epitome of treif, so to speak, the epitome of a non-kosher animal is the chazer. The chazer, the pig. The pig epitomizes an animal that is not kosher for all sorts of reasons. And the Torah tells us that the reason the chazir is not kosher, a pig is not kosher, is because it does have split feet, which in fact it sticks out when it lies down. But vohu gera lo yigar, but it does not chew the cud. Does not chew the cud, meaning it doesn't regurgitate. Many animals will chew and then bring it back up to chew again a number of different times. This the chazir doesn't do. And the Torah uses the language vohu gera lo yigar, but it, the cud, it does not chew the cud. Seems to be a bit of a double expression, an emphasis on that. And the Medrash tells us that in future, le'asid lava, in time to come when Mashiach comes, the chazir will become kosher. Will be allowed. Not because the Torah is going to change. Ultimately, the Torah is going to stay the same Torah even when Mashiach comes. But because the nature of the chazir is going to change, in that it will start chewing the cud. And that's what the Torah indicates. Hu gera lo yigar, it does not chew the cud. If it did chew the cud, it would be okay. but it does not. And as long as it does not chew the cud, it's going to be forbidden, and in fact becomes the epitome of non-kosher. But in the time to come, when Mashiach comes, it will chew the cud, it will change its nature, and therefore it will be once again permitted to eat. We also, as I mentioned earlier, we also learn about, and are taught about in this week's portion, we are taught about the laws of purity and impurity. And one of the laws, one of the verses in the Torah states, V'chol kli cheres, any earthenware vessel, asher yipol mehem el toichoi, in which it falls into this vessel will fall something that is not kosher, not that is impure, something that's mentioned previously as impure, then we are told if it falls inside of it, then it becomes impure. And the status of an earthenware vessel is that inside it becomes impure, but if something touches it from the outside, it doesn't become impure. It has to actually fall inside the vessel for it to become impure. And this is different to other materials. Other materials, if it touches outside, whether it's any type of metal, then it becomes impure as well. And the reason for that is because, or an insight into this, is that earthenware is generally a very low value, almost worthless type of material. It only has a value when it's in the form of something useful and is made into some sort of vessel that can be used. Otherwise, in of itself, it's worthless. Only when you put something in it does it give it a worth and a value as something purposeful, something useful. Other materials, regular metals, they have a value intrinsically. Whatever their shape, whatever their form, gold, metal, silver, copper, any sort of metal has a value without actually using it to put anything inside. And therefore, if it gets touched even from the outside, it will become impure because it has a value. And there is a very important lesson for us to learn from this. We, as human beings, are like earthenware vessels. Ultimately, we are told that God created man afar min ha'adama, as earth from the ground, i.e. earthenware. We are like earthenware, we are compared to the earth like earthenware vessels. And we too are the same as earthenware vessels. Our value is only if there's something inside of us. We have no intrinsic value to ourselves unless we fill ourselves with goodness and kindness. It's only when we fill ourselves inside with goodness, with kindness, with good deeds, that we become something of value. In our regular state as we are born, we're valued in the sense that we have potential. But ultimately we must remember it's only when there's something inside of us that we become value. We're not like gold and not like silver, where without doing anything they're of value. We need to do things to make ourselves valued and to ensure that we have values. That's what's inside of us. A very powerful lesson for us to learn from this law of purity and impurity. Thanks once again for watching, and as I say, and I've said for a few weeks, please do share this with your friends and family, and always, any feedback is most welcome.